All say I am the ill-fated crown princess. The crown prince, my childhood sweetheart, treats me with utter coldness. He loves consort Dong Liangdi, passionately, madly, to the point of obsession. How laughable! What gives them the right to assume the crown prince's eternal love must stand by his side? Have you finished? Dong Tian'er lightly smoothed the delicate folds of her skirt before rising. This humble servant feels unwell and must take her leave. She flashed me a seductive smile, then without bowing, swept away before the eyes of the entire palace staff. The unfinished arrangements for the Dragon Boat Festival were abruptly choked back in my throat. This was the 63rd time Dong Tian'er had publicly humiliated me during the morning audience. Everyone knew that a year prior, Dong Tian'er and I had entered the Eastern Palace one after the other. The Crown Prince cherished this new consort Liang like the apple of his eye, while treating me, the Crown Princess, with polite reserve. Consort Liang, how dare you repeatedly show disrespect to the Crown Princess? Lu, the secondary consort seated to my right, finally spoke up in indignation. She's merely a consort who snatched the position from someone else. Don't try to show off in front of me. Miss Dong, renowned throughout the capital, didn't even turn her head as she tossed a dismissive remark my way. My face darkened, and I flung the enameled tea bowl to the floor. The word snatch struck a nerve. Because, yes, I had snatched it from Dong Tian'er. Truth be told, she really had terrible luck. Raised since childhood by the Dowager Empress, she was the predestined crown princess consort. Yet the night before her coming-of-age ceremony, someone slandered her, claiming she brought misfortune to her parents and was born under an unlucky star. The Empress Dowager immediately ruled out Dong Tian'er as crown princess consort. Then, pointing at me beside her, she asked the Imperial Astronomical Bureau, "What do you think of her?" The Astronomical Bureau chief took my birth chart and bowed repeatedly, unspeakably auspicious. Unspeakably auspicious. Me, I was just out for a stroll in the palace? And so the pre-designated crown princess became me. Everyone said I was blessed, entering the palace and becoming crown princess. But the ill-fated Dong Tian'er was driven to the brink by rumors, nearly hanging herself from a corner tower. Fortunately, she was saved. Truthfully, such coincidences are rare in this world. It was merely a man-made farce. My father was the dynasty's sole duke of the realm. In life, he led armies to conquer vast territories for the emperor. My mother was Princess Kongding, the current emperor's own cousin and the late emperor's granddaughter. As their only daughter, I truly deserved the title of the most noble lady in the capital before my marriage. Dong Tian'er's background, however, was far less privileged. Orphaned at a young age, her father had been merely a minor official before his death. Only through posthumous honors for his service protecting the emperor was he elevated to Minister of Rights. After his death, her stepmother remarried, leaving Dong Tian'er without guardians. It was then that she found favor and was raised in the Dowager Empress's palace. Out of respect for the loyal minister's legacy, the emperor tacitly approved the Dowager consort's request to make Dong Tian'er the crown princess. Unfortunately, I had been raised under the Empress Dowager's care since childhood due to my mother's connections. Even more unfortunately, the Empress Dowager and the Dowager Consort, these two old rivals, had battled for decades during the late emperor's reign. The Empress Dowager's schemes were so transparent the entire court could see them coming. Thus, she was denounced, timed precisely for the night before my coming-of-age ceremony. I was summoned to the palace under the pretext that the Empress Dowager missed me terribly and wished to speak. One could only say Dong Tian'er was truly pitiful. But her misfortune didn't mean I had to be the one to suffer. She repeatedly humiliated me in public, so I had to teach her a lesson. Unable to act within the Eastern Palace, I prepared myself and entered the palace to pay my respects to the Empress Dowager. That afternoon, her female attendant arrived, Dong Liangdi, arrogant from her favor, 20 slaps across the face. Following the palace maid, I watched Dong Tian'er's face swell from the blows and left satisfied. As expected, by evening, Crown Prince Luo Rongzi came seeking retribution. Ruan Qingyao, what happened to Tian's face? I feigned sorrow. The Empress Dowager struck her, not me. Luo Rongzi's face turned icy. Wasn't it because you meddled? I pleaded earnestly. A slap is affection, a scolding is care. Dong's poor manners haven't been a recent development. If we keep indulging her, she'll eventually cause trouble in the palace. Neither of us will be able to protect her then. My words were filled with sorrow. The Eastern Palace is full of ears and eyes. Brother Crown Prince, aren't you afraid that if word gets out, people will impeach you for disregarding hierarchy and neglecting propriety? Don't provoke the emperor's displeasure. After all, there's still the second prince and the third prince. Luo Rongzi's face darkened with anger. Wan Qingyao, you've overstepped your bounds. I immediately stepped back 2 paces and bowed deeply. Your Highness, as Crown Princess, it is my duty to prioritize your interests above all else and prevent anything that might tarnish your reputation. Luo Rongzi remained silent. After a long moment, he offered me a faint, supporting hand, his tone softening slightly. It's not that serious. Tian'er merely withdrew slightly early during one of her greetings. 63 times, I corrected him. 63 times in total, up to now. He was momentarily speechless. When he spoke again, his tone was even gentler. As Crown Princess, you must be virtuous and magnanimous. Do not emulate those jealous women, vying for attention and causing a scene. It is unbecoming. He gave my hand a light pat, as if to soothe me, yet his words were unexpectedly cold. Wan Qingyao, within this Eastern Palace, Tian's is untouchable to you. He turned and walked away. I watched him depart, then gave a sarcastic smile to the palace maid beside me. How deeply affectionate. Right, Xianqiao? Xianqiao, Your Highness, the Empress Dowager's lady-in-waiting is waiting over there. I hurried to usher her into the hall. Her expression remained impassive as she announced, the Crown Princess is requested to receive the Empress Dowager's verbal edict. I knelt immediately. The lady-in-waiting's voice rose sharply. Do not trouble this Empress Dowager with such trifles henceforth. A mere concubine, and you, the Crown Princess, cannot handle her? Are you useless? Have you swallowed all my teachings? The next time you come, I shall slap you. I rose, utterly defeated. Xianqiao hurried to support me. I squeezed her hand, then clasped the hands of the other palace maids, whispering, we must strive harder. We must strive harder. Luo Rongzi visited me twice this month, neither more nor less. He came only on the days designated by palace protocol. The rest of the time, he was inseparable from Dong Liangdi. Rumor has it that on those 2 days, Dong Tian'er, her face swollen, couldn't leave her quarters and spoke ill of me to the Crown Prince. But I paid it no mind. Whom the Crown Prince loved was none of my concern, so long as it didn't hinder my rise to Empress or Empress Dowager. Truthfully, I knew Luo Rongzi before Dong Tian'er did. My father sent me to the palace early to attend the Empress Dowager, only retrieving me when I was a teenager, ready for marriage. Coincidentally, Luo Rongzi was the emperor's eldest son, also raised by the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager deliberately cultivated our relationship, and initially, things unfolded as she wished. My cousin and I got along well. That was until he saw Dong Tian'er emerge from the consort dowager's palace, a delicate willow swaying in the breeze, so pitiful she moved even me, her graceful demeanor radiant as the sun breaking through dawn's glow, luminous as lotus blossoms emerging from emerald waves. According to Luo Rongzi, that day he felt as if his soul had been carved out, love at first sight, a glance that felt like an eternity. He once sighed, before seeing Tian'er, I truly believed all women in this world were equally coarse and vulgar. I was deeply displeased. What about me? Luo Rongzi, slightly flustered, cousin, you are as graceful as willow catkins. Soon after, I found an excuse to return home. The 2 of them were as sweet as honey mixed with oil. I couldn't be bothered to be the third wheel. Unfortunately, I hadn't enjoyed a few days of peace at home before my old father sent me back. Naturally, I threw a tantrum. I can't get along with my eldest cousin. He called me ugly. I'm not going back. My father, the old duke, patiently coaxed me. Our Yao Yao doesn't care for him either, does she? The Empress Dowager is quite fond of you. Let's go back, shall we? But I grew impatient. Father, you always say that only with the Empress Dowager's favor will you secure a good marriage for me. But if I stay home, won't you and mother still cherish me? Our Ruan Duke's residence is the sole symbol of prestige in the capital. Why must we expend such effort to curry favor with the Empress Dowager? Father froze for a moment, exhaling a heavy sigh through his gray beard. Yao Yao, your father is old. I can no longer protect you. That day, my father, past 60, laid bare the truth of the Ruan family. Then at the height of its power, father had once been a celebrated warrior, but now he was old, having relinquished his military authority, leaving only the title. And father's only son, my half-brother, was a good-for-nothing, lacking any ambition. Though my mother was a princess, she was only a second wife, and bore no sons. After my father passed, only my brother, incapable of managing the estate, and I, his late-born daughter, remained. With no heir to carry on the glory of the Ruan duke's lineage, the Ruan clan was doomed to decline. If you could marry into the imperial family, you'd gain a powerful protector who could care for your mother. If you could also look after your brother, the Ruan name might not fall into ruin entirely. My father's eyes reddened as he spoke to his youngest daughter. I spent a sleepless night, then packed my belongings and returned to the palace the next day. After returning, I devoted myself solely to serving the Empress Dowager, abandoning any thoughts of becoming crown princess. Yet even the crown princess designate Dong Liangdi, whom the emperor himself had approved, encountered such misfortune. Through a twist of fate, I ended up marrying the crown prince instead. Before the wedding, Luo Rongzi, who had remained silent all along, suddenly appeared at the Empress Dowager's gate and knelt there for a day and night. The Empress Dowager was furious and cursed him, but ultimately consented to Dong Liangdi entering the Eastern Palace. There was just one condition: she was not to be a secondary consort, but at most a concubine who would not be recorded in the imperial register. Both of us married the crown prince in quick succession. Truly, we were fated rivals. Everyone said Lady Dong had bad luck, losing the position she thought was hers. The crown princess also had bad luck, marrying into such a troublesome concubine situation right after her wedding. Luo Rongzi didn't pity me. When the marriage was first arranged, he asked me, "Ruan Qingyao, was that fortune-telling business you're doing?" I was furious. How many years have we known each other? Don't you know what kind of person I am? Heaven knows I'd never dream of usurping someone else's place. Luo Rongzi nodded, his gaze dark and inscrutable. True. Since my cousin never wanted this in the first place, perhaps she should resign of her own accord. That would allow me and Tian'er to be together. Terrified, I knelt before him. Ancestors! This is a marriage bestowed by the Emperor and the Empress Dowager. Even if you lent me your head along with mine, I wouldn't dare do such a thing. He turned his face away. In the dim candlelight, I saw his tall figure sway slightly. All these years, I've walked on eggshells to fulfill my duty as crown prince. Yet not a single thing I've done has truly satisfied my heart. I listened in horror as his voice cracked with a sob. Only Tian'er has been the most cherished soul by my side. I have failed Tian'er. I have failed her. And you think you've done right by me? My head pounded as I massaged my temples on the reclining chair. The flashback ended, but I must continue the fight, for myself and my family. In the 3rd month of spring, I arranged for Luo Rongzi to take a concubine. The crown prince had just wed, so selecting a new consort wasn't urgent. Yet I petitioned the emperor and empress with words brimming with loyalty and virtue, leaving them no choice but to agree, and then praise me for my magnanimity. Dong Liangdi wept bitterly, cursing me for 3 days in the crown prince's embrace. Finally, he relented and sent his concubine, Dong Liangdi, to attend the selection in his stead. I tried to stop her. You're merely a secondary consort, not even a formal concubine. Your presence would violate protocol. Dong Liangdi fluttered her eyelashes at me coquettishly. Your Excellency speaks wisely. But this is His Royal Highness the Crown Prince's command. Thus, I sat helplessly beside her in the grand hall. I occupied the main seat, while she sat below me. The candidates advanced in waves, like blossoms in early spring, fresh and radiant. Dong Liangdi's task was to pluck the few withered leaves from this sea of flowers. If I favored a girl with better looks, she would rack her brains to find faults, refusing to let her be recorded. If a batch contained dark-skinned, short, or plain girls, she would extol their virtues, pressuring me to keep their tokens. Though infuriated, I maintained my composure to preserve decorum. According to Xin Chao, my face was as dark as gunpowder that day, leaving the others too frightened to utter a word. The result? Luo Rongzi stared at the cluster of flawed new concubines before him, lost in deep thought. I patiently explained beside him, these weren't my choice, they were handpicked by your darling consort Dong. I wouldn't dare disobey her orders. Luo Rongzi was clearly displeased. Tian'er throwing a tantrum is one thing, but the crown princess should at least exercise some judgment. Bringing in such women, what kind of impression does that make? I confessed my inadequacy. Truly, this humble servant is lacking in learning and talent, unable to assist Lady Dong in managing the Eastern Palace. Regrettably, none of these new beauties captured the crown prince's favor. So I decisively brought 2 newly selected beauties to the palace to pay respects to the empress. Observing Her Majesty's expression, 2 parts astonishment, 3 parts bewilderment, and 4 parts anger, I knew I had said nothing, yet revealed everything. The next day, the empress bestowed 2 new beauties upon me. I went to receive them with a smile, pleased to find these 2 ladies with slender shoulders and supple waists, standing gracefully. Though not breathtakingly beautiful, they were still quite lovely. I promptly sent them to serve tea in the crown prince's study. Xian Xiao remarked beside me, truly 2 exquisite beauties. Can the Dong family really monopolize His Highness forever? Indeed, I replied with a triumphant smile. Favor is the most unstable thing in this world. So, what happens next depends entirely on her skill. The empress truly understood men. Rumor had it that Luo Rongzi's eyes lit up the moment he saw the 2 beauties. That night, he abandoned Dong Tian'er and went to the guest quarters. The next morning during the audience, Dong Tian'er arrived unusually early. She sat silently throughout, her tear-filled eyes fixed on me from the corner of her seat as tears streamed down her face. Her sobbing was so intense that the other consorts dared not utter a sound, merely sipping their tea while watching my reaction. I smiled, delivered the necessary announcements, then addressed her kindly, "Stop crying here. I won't be swayed by such tactics. If you're capable, go fetch the crown prince back." Dong Tian'er instantly stopped her tears. She glared at me before hastily curtsying, "The crown princess is correct. This humble concubine takes her leave." Seeing the excited expressions of the other concubines below, my smile grew wider. Truth be told, Dong Tian'er had truly hit a snag this time. One of the 2 beauties, named Yu Jiao, was graceful and skilled in dance, possessing exquisite beauty and an alluring charm that greatly pleased the crown prince. She even seemed poised to surpass Dong Tian'er in favor. Yet this favored beauty was usually cautious in speech and conduct, rarely giving anyone cause for complaint. Watching Dong Tian'er force a smile and feign deep sisterly affection with Yu Jiao, I felt genuine joy at the harmony within the harem. Luo Rongzi, however, was thoroughly pleased. Tian'er truly is the woman who understands me best. Such thoughtfulness deeply comforts my heart. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Hearing my laughter, Luo Rongzi shot me a meaningful glance. If the crown princess has time to laugh here, perhaps she should first manage the Eastern Palace properly for me. I stifled my laughter, puzzled. What's not managed properly in the Eastern Palace? I've been married for many years, with numerous wives and concubines, yet I still have no son or daughter. Crown princess, do you know why? My heart sank. I hurriedly glanced at the crown prince's expression. He was gazing at the flowers and plants in the courtyard, his expression seemingly unchanged. I quickly composed myself and offered gentle counsel. "Your Highness, you have long favored consort Dong and consort Yu exclusively. With so many consorts in the Eastern Palace, it is only natural that you cannot shower them all equally." The crown prince snorted coldly, yet found no retort. He turned and walked away, hands clasped behind his back. I hastily summoned Xin Chao. We were too hasty. "You must ensure he doesn't grow suspicious." 2 months later, the heir the crown prince so desperately desired arrived. Yu Jiao was with child. Watching Dong Tian'er wring her handkerchief until her knuckles turned white during the morning audience, I sensed trouble brewing. Sure enough, the crown prince's joy lasted but a few days before the child was lost. While strolling by Chinli Pond, Yu Jiao happened upon Dong Tian'er. In the brief moment they passed each other, Yu Jiao slipped and slid into the pond. "Your servant did not touch her. How could I harm your highness's child? The path by the lake is narrow, the grass muddy and slippery, she lost her footing herself. I even tried to pull her back." Dong Tian'er wept bitterly in the Zhonghua hall, her tears falling like pear blossoms. I listened quietly to her defense, then turned my gaze to Luo Rongzi, who sat silently on the main seat. "Enough. I believe Tian's is innocent." Finally, he waved his hand impatiently. Supported by a maid, Dong Tian sniffled her way to a seat nearby. I rose and approached him. Your Highness, I have walked alongside others countless times by that Chinli pond. I have never once stumbled into the mud. He snapped impatiently, enough. I sighed inwardly. Your Highness. Luo Rongzi spoke wearily, Princess Consort, why are you so eager to pin the blame on Tians? I was startled. All the consorts were present, even the ladies-in-waiting sent by the Empress Dowager and the Empress were conspicuously seated. By openly exposing my conflict with Dong Tian'er before everyone, he truly spared me no dignity. It is true that in my heart, I feel you have usurped Tian'er's position. I have always felt indebted to her, which is why I have been more indulgent toward her. He rose, taking my hand. Cousin, you now hold the honor of Crown Princess. Bear with her more for my sake. Let this matter rest. He patted my hand lightly before turning and walking away. I stood rooted to the spot, stunned as if struck by lightning, until two palace attendants curtsied and withdrew. In their lowered eyes, I glimpsed a flicker of pity directed at me. I forced myself to watch them depart. Once they stepped beyond the palace gates, my gaze shifted to Dong Tian'er. If looks could pierce, I would have bored a hole through her. She met my stare without flinching, then rose with a smile. What are your orders, Crown Princess? Was it you? I ground out. What if it was me? What if it wasn't? She fluttered her eyelashes with a coy smile. The point is, His Highness said it wasn't me. Who dares say otherwise? My hand slammed onto the nearby table. That was His Highness's first child. Then I'll simply give him another child, Dong Tian'er said, turning halfway with a smile. Sister, you don't know, I'm already pregnant myself. Compared to my own child, what does someone else's matter? I gasped in shock, and the entire room erupted in commotion. Dong Tian'er walked up to me, lowering her voice to a soft, melodious tone. Whatever you plan to do, sister, you'd better prepare early. What else could I do? Of course, I chose to forgive her, them. I attended to Dong Tian'er with reverence, as if serving an ancestor, even more meticulously than I had with Yu Jiao. For 8 consecutive months, Luo Rongzi found no fault in me. He even praised me, something unprecedented. The Crown Prince's consort handles matters with great care. Well done. I thanked him outwardly, but inwardly, I sneered. Before I knew it, the day of delivery arrived. Over 9 months, Dong Tian'er had been pampered into a plump, fair-skinned beauty. Yet on the very day of childbirth, a catastrophic error occurred. For reasons unknown, Yu Jiao, who had been recuperating in her own chambers, suddenly stormed out as if possessed, charging straight toward Dong Tian'er's courtyard. She screamed, "You poisonous bitch! You killed my child, you won't get away with this." This very day coincided with Luo Rongzi's absence on official business outside the capital. I hurriedly gathered attendants to the delivery room, had Yu Jiao restrained, and personally stood guard at the door, more devoted than the child's father himself. By evening, Dong Tian'er delivered safely, a boy. Luo Rongzi rushed back through the night, his dark circles unable to conceal the ecstatic joy radiating from his face. He first visited Dong Tian'er and her newborn, then took my hand, sighing repeatedly, "Cousin, thank goodness for you. Otherwise, Tian'er would have been doomed." I humbly declined the praise, smiling with gentle wisdom. He seemed to forget that I, Ruan Qingyao, never engage in a losing venture. Before the child was even a month old, an imperial edict from the Empress Dowager arrived at the palace. The eldest grandson of the throne was to be brought into my palace to be raised, registered under my name. Dong Tian'er, still in her confinement period, wept like a little radish. The entire harem sighed that she had given birth to the eldest grandson, which should have meant peace of mind. Once the crown prince ascended the throne, she could have contended with me. Yet now, she had unwittingly done someone else's bidding. But they didn't know how deeply the entire palace valued the crown prince's eldest son. This child's birth finally completed the final piece of the imperial succession puzzle. With an heir, the crown prince would now, barring grave missteps, render the other princes utterly ineligible for the dragon robe. For such a crucial child, a legitimate birth was naturally best. Xian Xiao, however, rejoiced deeply for me. She understood why I valued Luo Rongzi's eldest son so highly, and she knew the reason behind my arduous scheming, because I Could not bear children. That spring, when I was 12, I joined the imperial princes and princesses on an outing to enjoy the fresh air. Rainy Qingming, I stumbled on a stone slab and tumbled headlong down a cliff. Though the drop wasn't deep, by the time they found me, night had fallen. The imperial physicians threw up their hands, sending me back to the duke's residence to await death. Naturally, my parents refused to give up. They sought out every renowned physician in the capital, but what good were they compared to the imperial doctors? It was my brother, who usually spent his days carousing, who somehow brought back a miracle doctor from the western regions. Desperate, my parents let him try. To everyone's surprise, that shamanic doctor actually used a single western herb to pull me back from the brink of death. It was a potent remedy. Before administering the treatment, the miracle doctor warned my parents, the medicine could cure the illness, but not the life. Everything comes at a price. The cost of my survival was that I would never bear children. Mother's tears fell like rain at these words. Father gritted his teeth and made his decision, she's our only daughter. Treat her. So the divine healer grabbed me by the neck and forced down 3 pounds of medicinal broth. Had I not woken coughing in the night, my parents would have thought I'd drowned in my bed. After lying bedridden for half a year, I began to grasp the situation. Mother once wept as she asked the shaman, she is a girl, she must marry someday. Is there no way to heal her body? The shaman didn't even lift his head. One thing for another. To cure her, a greater price must be paid. Can she afford it? From that moment, I understood, I could never be a concubine, not even to a crown prince or an emperor. Only by becoming the matriarch of a sufficiently illustrious household could my childlessness be largely overlooked. This truth was concealed by our entire family, even from the Empress Dowager. Her command that I raise her eldest grandson wasn't out of affection for me. She simply could not tolerate the thought that her great-grandson, who might one day become the imperial great-grandson, was registered under the name of a mere concubine. Just like Luo Rongzi, though he was the eldest son, personally raised by the Empress Dowager, he was denied the title of legitimate heir. He wasn't even named crown prince until he came of age. Even now, he must constantly scheme against his younger brothers, who were born into higher-ranking families. As a mother who bore no pain, I was subjected to relentless pressure, first summoned by the Empress Dowager, who commanded I treat the child as my own, then called before the Empress, where I endured half an hour of admonishment. I was warned never to mistreat consort Dong Liang, and that should I bear sons in the future, I must never show favoritism. I knew the Empress had always favored Dong Tian'er as crown princess. The Empress herself enjoyed considerable favor, bearing 4 princesses. Had any of them given birth to a son, Luo Rongzi would never have become crown prince. The Empress didn't want a crown prince not of her own blood to marry a woman from an overly illustrious family. I understood. Truthfully, the Empress was quite kind. At the end of her lecture, she even presented me with a jade ruby. I returned to the Eastern Palace beaming with joy, carrying both the ruby and the child's bestowed name. The eldest grandson was named Hushin, with the childhood name Fucking. Every stroke of the characters held the elders' profound hopes. Yet my luck ran out the moment I stepped back into the Eastern Palace. Heaven have mercy, I had barely earned a shred of Luo Rongzi's favor, only to face his cold, scowling gaze once more. He came more often, but his gaze never met mine, only Fucking's. However tender his eyes were upon the child, they turned cold and emotionless whenever they fell upon me. I offered him a faint smile. As long as I remained crown princess, I would forever hold the upper hand over Dong Tian'er. This was the status bestowed upon me by propriety. Dong Tian'er, as the daughter personally raised by the Dowager Empress, proved her worth. After several failed attempts, she focused solely on securing favor. Soon, she crushed the few concubines who had managed to rise. Within a year, she bore Luo Rongzi's eldest daughter. The crown prince cherished her like a precious jewel, naming her Xianheng. He even went to the palace specifically to petition for her to be granted the title of princess. Within another 2 years, Dong Tian'er gave birth to the crown prince's second daughter. All 3 children under Luo Rongzi's care were born to Dong Tian'er. For a time, Dong Tian'er's prominence knew no equal. Throughout the capital, everyone knew consort Dong was the crown prince's beloved. I dismissed these matters with a smile. As long as I remained crown princess, I would be the future empress. And an empress never loses. When Dong Tian'er conceived her fourth child, the dowager princess passed away. With her departure, the Empress Dowager seemed drained of her essence, suddenly withering away. She would often visit the Dowager Princess's memorial hall, sitting there for half a day at a time, not even allowing her personal ladies-in-waiting to approach. Within mere months, the Empress Dowager too passed away. The decades-long feud between Empress Dowager and consort finally drew to a close. May these two old adversaries, arriving in the underworld one after the other, find peace together. Raised by the Empress Dowager and as her granddaughter-in-law, I observed the 10-day mourning period alongside the Empress. By protocol, Dong Tian'er should not have been present. Yet she came, her belly swollen, kneeling behind me on the right. Her crimson lips parted as she whispered to me, "The Empress Dowager is finally gone. Luo Rongzi intends to make her a secondary consort." I offered no reply. Behind me on the left, Consort Lu seethed with hatred, her eyes nearly dripping blood. After the funeral rites concluded, Dong Tian'er was indeed made a secondary consort. With the Empress Dowager's obstruction gone, no one could prevent the birth mother of the eldest imperial grandson from ascending further. Luo Rongzi ordered me to preside over the investiture ceremony. After the rites concluded, he remarked to me with emotion, "This is all what Tian'er deserves." I asked him jokingly, "And what do I deserve?" Luo Rongzi fell silent for a moment, then turned away. "Crown Princess, haven't you received enough already?" He had always spoken to me this way, and I never took it to heart. Only later did I realize how I had overlooked the subtle malice hidden in his words, so much so that when the upheaval came, I was caught completely off guard. Fucking grew day by day, and I felt I had finally gained a firm foothold within the Eastern Palace. So I retreated into the palace, devoting myself to raising my child and contentedly fulfilling my role as a virtuous crown princess. Alas, while my palace enjoyed peaceful days, the outside world raged with unrelenting strife. I had no desire to meddle. These conflicts were 8 or 9 parts connected to Dong Tian's. Even if I wished to intervene, my heart might have been willing, but my strength was insufficient. Thus, when Luo Rongzi stormed in, furious and demanding an explanation for my dereliction of duty, I hadn't yet grasped the magnitude of the tragedy. Dong Tian's second daughter had died in infancy. Dong Tian's wept until she vomited blood repeatedly, fainting several times. She insisted Consort Lu had colluded with the kitchen to poison her daughter, and the eunuch brought in for interrogation confessed without hesitation. It was truly suspicious. But Luo Rongzi didn't find it suspicious. He immediately ordered Consort Lu's dismissal. I hurriedly intervened, "Your Highness, this eunuch was presented by Consort Dong's own people and hasn't been vetted by us. It's merely Consort Dong's one-sided account. Why not have them confront each other directly? That way, we can do justice to the young princess." Luo Rongzi flung my hand away. Tian'er has just endured the agony of losing her daughter. She's still in a daze. How could she face the murderer of her child? "Crown Princess, are you trying to kill her?" I hastily protested. "Lu concubine is the daughter of the Lu clan of Pangyang. If your Highness disposes of her arbitrarily, the Lu clan will not stand idly by." Luo Rongzi let out a cold laugh. In the candlelight of the grand hall, his expression was dark and inscrutable, tinged with a hint of cruelty. "Are you implying that I, the heir apparent of this nation, must bow to the whims of provincial aristocrats? True power lies in maintaining a delicate balance of checks and counterbalances. We both grew up studying in the palace, that's precisely what our tutors taught us." I didn't know where I'd gone wrong, and I stood there dumbfounded as he swept his sleeves and left. That very night, Consort Lu was deposed. Soon after, Luo Rongzi abruptly departed for Pangyang on official business. He rooted out the entire Lu clan on charges of treason, escorting them to the execution ground. Suddenly, Luo Rongzi felt like a stranger to me. Consort Lu and I entered the palace the same year. She neither held favor nor sought the limelight, though she was somewhat haughty. She and Luo Rongzi had been married for many years. On the night her father and brothers were beheaded, she quietly took her own life. Even Dong Tian'er, who had instigated this affair, grew fearful. I imagine she had only intended to harm Consort Lu at first, never dreaming it would cost the entire Lu clan their lives. She remained unusually quiet for a long time, staying within her own palace quarters, no longer stirring up trouble. I had intended to rescue consort Lu. But alas, during the Lu case trial, my own household faced calamity. My father fell gravely ill. The old man had merely shown off his pistol skills one evening, never expecting it would trigger a stroke. By the time I urgently sought permission from the Emperor and Empress to visit him, he lay paralyzed on his bed, drooling, slurring his words, and partially paralyzed. I burst into tears. Father. Mother wept uncontrollably beside him. Seeing me, a flicker of life returned to his eyes. He strained to lift his barely functioning hand, placing it over mine. His lips moved, uttering indistinct syllables. Prepare. For danger. In times of peace. Make. Preparations. For the future. Crying, I clasped his hand. Father, do not worry. I now have a legitimate firstborn son. The Emperor and Empress are most pleased with me. I have firmly established my position in the Eastern Palace. Father nodded slightly, seeming to relax. Yao Yao. You're good for nothing, brother. From now on. Depends. On you. He never finished his sentence before slipping into unconsciousness. Weeping, I summoned the imperial physicians. They labored over him until nightfall, but my father's life could not be saved. He passed away. He had spent his entire life in the thick of battle, forging vast territories for the current emperor. Yet even at his deathbed, his final worries were for his useless eldest son and the crumbling family legacy. My father was interred in the imperial mausoleum, while my brother inherited the duke's title. Though he traded his battle cloak for an imperial robe, he remained the same idle playboy. Even during the mourning period, he carried his golden birdcage and wandered off to the Spring Breeze Pavilion. At his age, my brother possessed nothing but a title, no achievements to his name. I knew the Ruan family had always relied solely on my father. Now that pillar had fallen. Since my mother was not his biological mother, the Ruan clan was bound to decline. All I could do was become the next pillar propping up this gilded facade. When the day of the family's ruin came, I could at least ensure a dignified end, allowing the Ruan kin to meet their final days with grace. I never imagined that day would come so swiftly. Nor so bitterly. On the day my father passed, His Majesty wept bitterly. Soon after, his health began to decline. He gradually became bedridden, his mind often clouded. Thus, it was not long before the Empress issued an edict: Crown Prince Luo Rongzi would assume regency. The moment Luo Rongzi stepped onto the court platform and the ministers bowed before him, everyone understood the Empress had become the de facto Empress Dowager, while Luo Rongzi was the new ruler. As the de facto Empress, I assisted in drafting the titles for the consorts to be elevated to the rank of Imperial Consort. The current Empress was not the birth mother of the Crown Prince, so she deliberately avoided any appearance of impropriety, not even ruling from behind a curtain. As the Crown Prince's lawful wife and the nominal mother of the great-grandson, I naturally assumed the duties of Empress. Luo Rongzi summoned me and solemnly placed the Phoenix seal in my hands. He told me the Emperor was now at the end of his strength, and our era had arrived. I was to stand by his side and serve as his capable right hand. Later, I reflected that Luo Rongzi was truly a cunning old fox. Through all this, he lulled me into complacency. Still reeling from the grief of losing my father, I lowered my guard, failing to notice that Luo Rongzi had secretly arranged for a lady-in-waiting to instruct Dong Liangdi in the etiquette befitting an empress. He even ordered her to learn how to draft imperial edicts. There was never any marital affection between him and me. The affair with Consort Lu was merely a rehearsal before he deposed me. After 3 months as regent, Luo Rongzi suddenly submitted a memorial accusing the Ruan family of treason. By the time I received the news within the palace, the imperial guards had already surrounded the duke's residence and arrested my brother. This spectacle had been meticulously staged. The emperor could never have approved such a memorial. It was entirely Luo Rongzi's self-directed drama. He had long desired the complete annihilation of the Ruan family. I was utterly unprepared. Upon hearing the news, I rushed to the palace to seek an audience with the empress, only to be forcibly dragged back by men from the crown prince's residence. They confined me within the palace, informing me that the Ruan case was still under investigation and that I must not interfere. I must see the crown prince. My head spun, my mouth parched. I scraped together my last ounce of strength to speak. His Highness does not wish to see you. They slammed the palace gates shut. Yet that night, Luo Rongzi came. I knelt at his feet as he looked down on me with contempt, as if I were a mere insect. Ruan Qingyao, he spoke first, his tone restrained yet regretful. You must want to ask why, correct? Cousin! I crawled toward him, clutching his trouser leg. My father served the imperial house his entire life, leaving him riddled with injuries and illness. His loyalty is beyond question. He silently wrenched my hands away. From childhood, the emperor told me General Ruan was a rare military genius, brave and skilled in battle. He was utterly loyal, as close to the emperor as a brother. He chuckled softly, his tone gentle. He knew his achievements threatened the throne, so he voluntarily surrendered his military power. He was humble, knew when to yield, understood the times. I stared at him, overcome by an indescribable dread. Then why did you annihilate the Ruan family? I detest such ministers most of all. He suddenly hurled a nearby flower vase to the floor with a crash. He stood there like a monument to virtue, noble character, moral perfection. What difference did his death make? Every army in the northwest still looked to him for guidance. Neither my father nor I could match the lingering authority he held over those troops. My throat felt parched, my vision blurred. Simply because he was the perfect loyal subject? Even though he posed no threat to imperial power. Just because his nobility would make any monarch pale in comparison in the annals of history. Luo Rongzi's expression hardened. He seized my throat. Who gave you permission to speak thus? I struggled desperately. Realizing his own loss of composure, he released his grip. Coughing violently, I pressed on, refusing to concede, but my brother is a good-for-nothing. He's incapable of anything. So what? He is your father's son. Luo Rongzi's expression bordered on madness. Ruan Qingyao, if your father truly despised fame and fortune, why did he take Princess Kongding as his second wife? Why did he send you to the palace, forcing me to marry you as crown princess? I stared at him in disbelief. You can't find fault with the Ruan family anymore, so now you nitpick? My parents' marriage was arranged by His Majesty, as was ours. The emperor's will cannot be defied. You. Shut up. He drew a deep breath, seeming to calm himself. Ruan Qingyao, you are indeed wronged, but I have grown utterly sick of you. You've gained far too much these years. It's time to give back to Tians. I thought I'd long since lost the ability to cry, but hearing those words, tears still streamed down my face. Don't deceive yourself. Cousin, you never truly loved Dong Tian'er. All these years, you've merely used her to counterbalance me, the crown prince's consort with my privileged background, just as the empress dowager and the dowager consort do. Luo Rongzi, you've truly learned quite a few imperial arts, haven't you? His expression flickered. Don't project your own thoughts onto others, Ruan Qingyao. I smiled bitterly. Project? Cousin, you truly misunderstand me. Regardless of your own feelings, I, Ruan Qingyao, have held nothing but sincerity for you all these years. His expression shifted slightly, as if doubting my words. Tears streaming down my face, I prostrated myself before him again and again. The Ruan family has offended the Emperor's Majesty. We deserve death. Qingyao dares not plead innocence. But your Highness is benevolent and kind-hearted. I beg you to spare my brother's life. Do not let the entire court lose heart. I lifted my face, tears gushing like a spring. If my disgrace could bring a smile to your Highness's face, Qingyao would gladly accept punishment. But I fear this parting may be our last. Crown Prince brother. I only wish for your health and safety, year after year. I bowed my head again and again. Luo Rongzi stood before me, his expression seemingly softening ever so slightly. Understood. With those words, he turned and left. My strength drained away, and I collapsed onto the ground. All the affection from moments before vanished without a trace. My heart grew cold, and the world spun dizzyingly around me. Xian Chao rushed over, weeping, trying to help me up. I struggled to rise, but darkness engulfed my vision. Amidst Suanko's shrieks, I collapsed once more. I was pregnant. This child had come at the worst possible time. Now confined within the palace walls, I could barely protect myself, let alone safeguard an unborn child. Countless times I had prayed to the gods and Buddhas in the temple for a child of my own, but more often, I prayed for the Ruan family's safety year after year, for my loved ones to live out their days in peace. Those gods and Buddhas must have ears somewhere. They took all my offerings and incense money, yet failed to protect the family I cherished most. If I ever make it out of here alive, I swear I'll never believe in Taoist priests or Buddhist deities again. If I ever make it out of here alive. The food in the palace grows worse by the day. My palace servants were taken away early on, leaving only Xin Chao and 2 matrons to watch over me. Aside from meals, nothing else from the regular provisions ever reached my palace anymore. Fucking was taken away by Dong Liangdi on the very day my accident happened. I had raised this child for 4 years. The day he left, he clung to my sleeve, crying with a heart-wrenching wail. Fucking cried hoarsely, "Mother Empress. Mother Empress. Are you abandoning me? Poor child. It's not that your mother doesn't want you, it's that your heartless father has abandoned your mother." Dong Liangdi now truly basks in the zenith of her power. Her 4th child, a son, has been born. With the return of the eldest imperial grandson, everyone likely already knows who the next crown princess will be. Confined within the palace walls, I am effectively deposed. I cannot even discern the fate of the Ruan family. I, Ruan Qingyao, who schemed for a lifetime, who could have foreseen this outcome? Clutching my ever-growing belly, my heart is utterly desolate. Father, your daughter, whose health you once ruined, is miraculously about to give you a grandson. If your spirit still watches over us, I beg you to protect this child's safe arrival. The meals brought to me grew simpler, colder, and finally spoiled. My limbs wasted away day by day, while only my belly swelled to frightening proportions. This child is remarkably resilient, still moving inside me. I took Suanko's hand and placed it on my belly. Xian Chao stared at my emaciated frame, reduced to a bundle of sticks, tears streaming down her face. But there was nothing to be done. Even though she barely ate, our rations weren't enough to feed one person properly. I was too weak to move, and Zuanko's face was sallow and gaunt, sustained only by sheer willpower. Your Highness, Consort Dong. Won't she come help us? Xian Chao, starved to the point of delirium, lay beside me, her words a murmur. How could she possibly help us? I knew Xian Chao was delirious from hunger. With a bitter smile, I handed her a cup of cold tea. She gulped it down, swallowing even the tea leaves. Tears mingled with tea water trickled down her cheeks as she sobbed. Your Highness, is the Crown Prince trying to starve you to death in the palace? The little prince you carry is his own flesh and blood. I had little strength left to speak, only managing to shake my head. I went into labor on the day I was 8 months pregnant. That night, I got up to use the chamber pot, but my legs were weak, and I stumbled. Amidst pools of blood and Zuanko's wails, I lay on the palace hall's carpet, struggling through labor. Childbirth was excruciating. No imperial physician attended me, no midwife was present, not even a stove to boil water. The maids watching over me panicked, but Xian Chao threw herself beside me, relying on her memory of her own brother's birth to assist me as best she could. I watched the dawn rise through the window, then the dusk descend. By the time the full moon hung in the sky, my eyes were blurred and I had no strength left. Xian Chao cried in desperation, Your Highness, you can't collapse here. Bite me, bite my arm, and you'll find the strength. She thrust her skin-and-bones arm toward my mouth. Though my vision was already blurred, a smile spread across my face without my knowing it. At least I had Xian Chao by my side before I died. In this deep palace, where hearts were cold and indifferent, Xian Chao was a simple-minded girl devoted solely to me. Alas, she had followed the wrong mistress. Once I was dead, she too would not escape death. She too would not escape death. Another wave of labor pains washed over me, churning my womb like a raging sea, 1,000 sharp blades twisting within. The agony made my vision blacken, yet I summoned every ounce of strength for one final push. Suddenly, a tearing pain ripped through my lower body, and a clear, piercing cry of a newborn echoed through the hall. It's out! It's out! A little princess! Xian Chao cried joyfully. Exhausted, my vision blurred. Through the haze, I saw Xian Chao cradling a blood-soaked bundle. The tiny thing kicked its limbs, its cry faint yet distinct. My child. My miraculously granted child. Suddenly, tenderness flooded my heart. Thank goodness, she's a girl. Perhaps Luo Rongzi would spare her life, find her a kind foster mother, and let her grow up safely. Your Highness, you're bleeding. Xian Chao cried out suddenly. She frantically grabbed bedding and stuffed it beneath me. I felt a chill spread through my body. I knew it was likely postpartum hemorrhage. Giving birth under such harsh conditions, I was unlikely to survive. Suddenly, the palace gates swung wide open. The night wind blew in, and I saw Dong Tian'er standing before the hall entrance, her face tense. Behind her followed a group of palace attendants. She had come after all. Go. Take care of this place, Dong Tian'er ordered coldly. I watched as the imperial physicians and wet nurses hurried over, taking the baby from Zhuangko's arms and swaddling her in a blanket. I smiled. My child would live. Dong Tian'er, I entrust my child to you, I said to the lavishly dressed woman. I am dying. Treat her as your own daughter, just as I did with fucking. Dong Tian'er clenched her fists. You're dreaming. Please, just feed her. My smile remained, though my vision blurred. I'm sorry, Dong Tian'er. That crown princess position. I didn't mean to. Dong Tian'er pressed her lips together, her gaze cold. Her eyes flashed with icy light, as if saying, you've finally met your match. I opened my eyes again 3 days later. Noon sunlight filtered through the gray, carved wooden window, warming my face. Squinting, I saw Daylily's tear-stained eyes. Your Highness, you're finally awake. Her eyes were swollen like peaches, tears streaming down her cheeks like a small stream. I shielded my eyes from the glare, momentarily dazed. Then I pinched my own skin, only then did I believe it, I was still alive. I had snatched back my life. I grabbed Zhuangko's arm. Where's the child? The young princess was taken away by consort Dong, Xian Chao choked out. Your Highness, please focus on recovering first. I spent my confinement period in seclusion. Some kind soul outside the palace improved my meals, even sending tonic soups to restore my blood and energy. The matrons guarding us were replaced too. The new ones weren't harsh or stern, sometimes they even lent a hand to care for me. We, mistress and servant, had somehow survived. By the 3rd month of confinement, I finally learned the fate of the Ruan family. My lively, adorable niece was strangled during the confiscation of their estate. My 2 bright, studious nephews were poisoned in prison. My noble and virtuous sister-in-law took her own life behind bars. Finally, my mother, the Kongding princess, was granted a cup of poisoned wine. All were dead, leaving only my brother alone to embark on his exile to the northern lands. I begged Luo Rongzi to spare my brother's life, and he did indeed spare only his. I am truly grateful to His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, I murmured to the palace gates after staring at them for 2 hours, then smiled at Xian Chao. Zhuangko's face was bitterly sorrowful. Your Highness, cry it out. Crying might ease your heart. I shook my head, saying nothing. 3 more months passed before the chief eunuch of Luo Rongzi arrived. She brought the Crown Prince's decree. I couldn't be bothered to kneel and receive the decree. Instead, I asked him directly, after my dethronement, where shall I be relocated? The chief eunuch bowed low, cleared his throat, and gave a dry chuckle. Your Highness, you have not been dethroned. I didn't process it immediately, staring at him blankly. The Empress Dowager intervened to protect you. No, she is now the Dowager Empress. The late Emperor has passed away. He unfolded the imperial decree and read aloud in a high-pitched voice. I, the Emperor, bear the responsibility of the realm and value talent above all. The Crown Prince's consort, Lady Ruan, possesses virtues worthy of my side. Her heart is steadfast and her mind mature, having cultivated wisdom since youth. She is my good fortune. Now, I hereby confer upon you the title of Empress. You shall succeed me and jointly govern the realm, ensuring the people live in peace and contentment. Xian Chao wept with emotion. I remained frozen in my chair, not accepting the decree. After a long moment, I asked him, my daughter. How is she? The grand eunuch closed the imperial decree and bowed deeply once more, speaking with utmost reverence, "Her Highness the Princess is being raised by the noble consort. She is, of course, well. However." He cleared his throat and lowered his voice. "After your Majesty leaves, it would be best to bring her back as soon as possible. After all, noble consort Dong is not the young princess's birth mother. These past days, her care has been rather." I had already rushed out. The heavy palace gates swung open by the guards, stirring thick clouds of dust. I strode through the swirling particles, letting them dance in the sunlight before settling at my feet. The coronation ceremony for the empress was grand and magnificent. All the ministers came to pay homage, the proceedings radiating the atmosphere of a new emperor ascending the throne and a renewed court. Yet throughout the entire event, Luo Rongzi and I, the central figures, exchanged not a single word. Even when he personally placed the phoenix crown upon my head, I obediently kept my gaze lowered, avoiding his eyes. After the investiture, I withdrew to the inner palace, disengaging from court affairs. The imperial seal was never given to me, it must have been secretly handed to Dong Tian'er during the consort's investiture. I lived quietly with Fuan. When I first retrieved her from Dong Tian'er, she was as thin as a mouse. Though 9 months old, she hadn't grown much in stature. I begged Dong Tian'er to give her a mouthful of food, and she indeed gave only a single mouthful. Without a word, I carried my daughter to see the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager's delighted expression vanished the instant she held Fuan. She weighed the tiny, mouse-like child in her arms, her face turning pale with fury. The Empress Dowager had raised 4 daughters herself. Fuan's plight struck a nerve with her. After all, the Empress Dowager feared nothing more than a princess falling out of favor in the palace. Dong Tian'er was reprimanded and made to kneel before Changle Palace. She listened to the scolding with a blank expression, coldly admitting her guilt, as if maintaining the dignity befitting an imperial consort. Who didn't know that imperial consort Dong had 2 sons who enjoyed unparalleled favor throughout the palace? Naturally, she stood on the same side as Luo Rongzi. The Empress Dowager was not the emperor's birth mother, the emperor paid her only superficial respect. But while the emperor could afford such treatment, the imperial consort could not. Thus fucking was taken away and raised in the Empress Dowager's palace. After Dong Tian'er's departure, I went daily to pay my respects to the Empress Dowager. She was my benefactor, my release from the cold palace owed entirely to her intercession. I heard the Empress Dowager summoned Luo Rongzi, then brought forth the late emperor's remains. The late emperor and my father were as close as brothers, and the Empress Dowager and the late emperor were deeply devoted to each other. Luo Rongzi had already angered the Empress Dowager by ordering the death of Princess Kongding. If he were to now depose the daughter of the Duke of Ruan, the Empress Dowager would issue an imperial decree rebuking the emperor for his lack of filial piety. This was a grave offense. Luo Rongzi dared not bear such a label, so he released me. I will cherish the Empress Dowager's kindness for the rest of my life. Yet my visit here is not solely to repay that debt. I raised fucking for many years. Though we've been apart for over a year, he still recognizes me as his mother. I intend to take him back to my side. Come spring, Dong Tian'er conceived her 5th child. The Empress Dowager summoned the harem and publicly returned Fu Qing to me. As I led the overjoyed boy by the hand, I caught Dong Tian'er biting her lip so hard it turned pale and blue. This is only the beginning, I silently told her. If she dreams of becoming the favored consort who reigns supreme over the 6 palaces, her trials are yet to come. I kept a low profile in the palace with my 2 children. Perhaps because fucking was under my care, Luo Rongzi never named him crown prince. My position as empress seemed secure, yet it was precarious. But it didn't matter. If he wouldn't name fucking, he could only choose one of Dong Tian'er's other sons. For apart from Dong Tian'er, no other woman in the harem bore children. This truth lay buried like a landmine within the palace walls. Everyone knew it existed, yet none dared speak it aloud. But it was bound to explode. Before giving birth, consort Dong had a fierce argument with Luo Rongzi. She then went into premature labor and bore a son. Unlike his 2 elder brothers, the 3rd prince was not promptly named. Instead, Dong Tian'er was, unprecedentedly, deliberately ignored. I seized this opportunity to secretly reconnect with my spies and contacts within the palace. Dong Tian'er was cunning, after all. The Cold War between the emperor and his consort ended when Dong Tian'er pleaded for forgiveness. Luo Rongzi ultimately couldn't bring himself to be ruthless, allowing her to retain control over the 6 palaces. "What should we do, Your Highness?" Xian Chao, holding Fuan, looked bewildered. "They won't remain peaceful forever." I practiced my calligraphy with utter indifference. Dong Tian'er wields too much power. A man like Luo Rongzi won't tolerate her forever. I deliberately allowed everything to unfold, feigning illness to order the harem to pay morning and evening respects to the imperial consort, refusing to seek any power, even letting Dong Tian'er preside over the silk-rearing ceremony. Over the years, 2 outcomes emerged. First, Dong Tian'er came to dominate the harem. Second, Luo Rongzi no longer favored her exclusively. Since Luo Rongzi ascended the throne, many young beauties had entered the palace. Consider this: Dong Tian'er, who had borne 5 children, was clearly aging. More crucially, the once devoted, cherished figure now wielded excessive power. Having long performed the duties of empress, Dong Tian'er had gradually revived the dwindling Dong clan. Numerous capable Dong family members emerged in the court, forming a new network of powerful relatives through interconnections. This was naturally something Luo Rongzi could not tolerate. Yet he himself was largely responsible for creating this situation. When consort Lu, born into a prestigious clan, challenged Dong Tian'er, he had the entire Lu family executed. Then, to ensure a noble consort like me held sway over her, he annihilated the Ruan clan. Serves him right. As the Dong clan's power grew fiercer, though the Empress Dowager could suppress them, Luo Rongzi harbored resentment toward her as mother and son, unwilling to see her intervene. With the Empress Dowager out of the picture, only I, the rightful empress, remained. Thus, the scales of power tilted in my favor. Though I had kept a low profile these years, I had been far from idle behind the scenes. I reactivated my network of spies within the palace. Over the years, no matter how great or small the events within the various palaces, none escaped my notice. The day the imperial seal returned to my hands, I swiftly reclaimed the authority of the empress. Dong Tian'er, however, suffered a devastating fall. The newly favored consort Tong gave birth to a son, but he died before the month was out. Luo Rongzi went to pay his respects, and Tong Fei wept on his arm all night long. Before I could offer any words of comfort, Luo Rongzi ordered the entire palace to be turned upside down. The investigation revealed that a eunuch from the same hometown as Dong Tian'er's personal maid had secretly smothered the infant prince. Empress Dowager Dong was stripped of her title, demoted to consort Dong. Her children were taken from her, and all her attendants were executed. Dong Marin knelt outside the emperor's study for a day and night through the blizzard. Snow piled on her shoulders, burying her like a snowman. Carrying pastries to soothe Luo Rongzi's frustration, I stepped out of the warm study and saw Dong Tian'er kneeling below the lofty stone steps. A cold smile escaped me. "Next time, don't be so ruthless." She lifted her gaze toward the snow-laden eaves. The emperor's palace rose majestically, even the guardian beasts atop the ridge stones radiating an aura of fierce, untouchable authority. Yet Dong Tian'er looked upon them without a trace of reverence in her eyes. I saw mockery, hatred, and a stubborn, unyielding defiance. Her face was frozen pale, yet her smile was bright. "Next time, no one will find a single flaw in me." She collapsed suddenly. I tilted my head slightly to glance at the roof ridge, letting out a long sigh. My exhaled breath formed visible patterns in the snow, turning into droplets, then into icicles. Who among us isn't like that? We enter these ornate palaces warm and alive, only to be carried out cold and lifeless. Even if one survives, how much warmth remains in the heart? Calculations, concealment, fake smiles. How much longer must these endless days drag on? I pulled my thoughts back and commanded the attendants, "Carry her back. Tend to her well. No negligence." The young eunuchs by her side looked puzzled. "No neglect?" "But your majesty ordered." "When I say no neglect, it means no neglect. Now go." Xian Chao scolded them. "They say the emperor is the supreme ruler, and it's no exaggeration. The honors and fortunes within the harem all revolved around Luo Rongzi's whims, no matter how absurd or ridiculous they might be." Not long after I became a competent empress praised by court and country alike, Dong Tian'er was reinstated as imperial consort. Months later, she retrieved her child. Several months after that, she regained her role overseeing the 6 palaces. As for me, the following year I was reprimanded for advising on state affairs and confined to my quarters for the second time. I remained unflustered. During my confinement, I devoted myself solely to caring for fucking and Fuan. Released after 2 months, I resumed my routine of carrying pastries to Luo Rongzi's quarters to pay my respects, showing not a trace of resentment, fulfilling my role as a virtuous wife deeply devoted to her husband. After that great calamity, Dong Tian'er was deposed several more times. She held the titles of Consort Dong, Noble Consort Dong, and Consort Dong, yet within a year, she would regain the rank of Noble Consort. She no longer enjoyed the favor of her youth. Though she often wielded power rivaling the empress, her repeated offenses against the emperor led to her frequent deposals and loss of favor, a pattern now all too common. We 2 consorts, one rising as the other fell, one restored as the other was deposed, formed 2 starkly contrasting factions within the palace. It mirrored the decades-long, unyielding rivalry between the Empress Dowager and the imperial consort who raised us both, a feud that burned for years, unresolved even in death. Luo Rongzi grew ever more erratic in his moods. He found pretexts to depose the second prince, exile the third prince, and dispose of all his younger brothers who had once enjoyed the late emperor's favor. When the court nobles petitioned for clemency, he eliminated them using methods identical to those employed against the Liu and Ruan families. Consorts who pleaded for their father's families were cast into the cold palace, stripped of all favor. Even the Empress Dowager could no longer bear to watch and attempted to reason with him. But Luo Rongzi refused to listen to anything. He immediately threatened her by invoking the fate of the eldest princess's husband's family. Left with no choice, the Empress Dowager withdrew to the Buddhist hall. Luo Rongzi trusted no one anymore, loyal ministers, consorts who had shared his bed for years, even the Empress Dowager who had raised him, all became assassins lurking in the shadows, their daggers poised to strike, their cold stares piercing his back. Even if it was all just his own delusion. He was no longer young. The former crown prince had transformed from a cold-blooded schemer into a paranoid and obsessive emperor. Where once he could maintain the appearance of a refined gentleman, gentle as jade, now his face bore the unmasked traces of suspicion, his slanted gaze dripping with ruthlessness. Beneath this cruelty lay a heart growing ever more fragile. For years since entering the palace, I had faithfully brought him soup pots and pastries, bowing my head to inquire after his health and urge him to take care. I brought the children along too, the growing fucking to organize his memorials, Fuan to grind his vermilion ink. He once voiced his doubts to me, "Empress, you needn't personally attend to such trivial matters as delivering pastries." I lifted my face, revealing the same smile as during our wedding night, and spoke the exact words I had uttered when Lady Ruan faced calamity. Regardless of what His Majesty may think, this servant's devotion to the Emperor remains utterly sincere. Unlike the last time, he seemed slightly moved. Indeed, in this palace, true sincerity is exceedingly rare. Now that he holds supreme power, who would offer him genuine devotion? Not Dong Tian'er. Luo Rongzi alternated his affection between me and Dong Tian'er. If forced to choose, he likely favored Dong Tian'er more. The eldest princess, Xianheng, was his precious jewel, while his 2 lively, adorable young sons were the apples of his eye. By comparison, fucking still hadn't been named crown prince, while Fuan was frail and neglected. My children, after all, were overshadowed by Dong Tian'er's offspring. When fucking turned 14, the Empress Dowager passed away suddenly. She had been a virtuous consort and a loving mother throughout her life. Her 4 daughters rushed to the palace upon hearing the news, each reduced to tears. I meticulously arranged the Empress Dowager's funeral rites. After the national mourning period ended, Luo Rongzi also fell ill. The imperial physicians diagnosed him with exhaustion and recommended rest. Just as he began to recover after 6 months of recuperation, he caught a cold. This illness left him bedridden. Dong Tian'er and I took turns attending to him personally at the imperial bedside. This rotation was Luo Rongzi's own instruction. He disliked seeing either of us receive exclusive favor in his presence, even as a patient. Whenever Dong Tian'er and I crossed paths, our exchanged glances inevitably flashed with daggers. Luo Rongzi seemed to relish the spectacle, as if our rivalry, 2 women bound by mutual animosity, fighting over him restored some vitality to his fading spirit. He appeared to have forgotten how he once cherished Dong Tian'er like a precious jewel. Sometimes I would see Dong Tian'er sitting by his bedside, feeding him medicine, as they spoke of vows made in their youth. Yet in Luo Rongzi's eyes, there was only suspicion, no trace of the deep affection of those days. I took great pleasure in sending younger concubines to interrupt their intimate whispers. Even the most devoted emperor remains a man, he could never resist a young beauty throwing herself at him. All praised the empress's skill. With the emperor bedridden for over a year, consort Dong gradually lost her frequent access to his presence. Rumors spread that the empress personally brewed and tasted the emperor's medicines, tending to him day after day without complaint. I began to overhear whispers among the servants in the palace corners, the emperor's days are numbered. Empress Ruan has finally seen her time come. Won't consort Dong be turned into a human pig by her majesty in the future? Xuanxiao's face paled slightly as she stole a glance at me. I merely smiled and ordered the gossiping palace maid dragged out to face punishment. Luo Rongzi's condition truly deteriorated day by day, and I, indeed, was nearing the end of my ordeal. But I wasn't the only one about to see the light at the end of the tunnel. That autumn, Luo Rongzi's illness deteriorated rapidly. In late summer, he could still summon his favorite concubines. By the autumn equinox, he fell into a coma and never rose again. During the white dew season, he could still review memorials from his bedside. By the frost's descent, he could no longer sit upright. It was an afternoon just before the start of winter. Outside, Fuan played boisterously with two younger princesses, their laughter filling the air. Inside, I tended a small medicinal stove, simmering a pot of richly colored and fragrant herbal broth. Luo Rongzi lay on his back on the bed, his eyes fixed intently on me. I lifted my gaze to meet his and offered him a gentle smile. He seemed to smile back, uttering his first words of concern to me, "Qingyao, you've worked so hard." I smiled gently, "For your majesty, it's no trouble at all." His gaze softened further. His eyes, yellowed by long illness, turned toward the window as he murmured, "Why hasn't Jinner come?" I fanned the flames in the pot with a small feather fan and replied softly, "Fucking is growing up. He's studying with the Grand Tutor. Has your majesty forgotten this?" He paused, then smiled with the tenderness of a father, "Yes, I have been confused by my illness." Suddenly, he reached out from beneath the brocade quilt, beckoning me closer. "All these years, I have yet to designate a crown prince. Fucking has been raised well by you, Empress. Convey my imperial decree, appoint the eldest son as crown prince." I smiled, this time, a genuine smile. But my laughter lasted only a moment. I stood solemnly, bowed to him, then ordered the imperial scribe to draft the edict for his review. Luo Rongzi appeared utterly exhausted. He merely glanced at the imperial edict in its bright yellow paper, nodded, and lay back down on the pillow. Amidst the calm, the crucial matter of establishing the foundation of the empire was thus settled. And I, as if nothing had happened, picked up the medicine bowl from the stove, poured its contents into a jade cup, and carried it to the bedside, just as I did every ordinary afternoon. "Your Majesty, it's time for your medicine." He obediently lifted his head as I spooned the liquid into his mouth, one spoonful at a time. After a few sips, his brow furrowed. "Why is this medicine so much more bitter than usual today?" My movements remained steady, my smile gentle and sweet. "Your Majesty, bear with it. Finish this bowl, and you won't have to drink it again." Luo Rongzi lifted his head slightly. "What?" "Your Majesty, this is the final bowl," I replied, my smile unchanged as I brought another spoonful to his lips. His lips parted, a look of confusion spreading across his face. "Qingyao, what do you mean, the final bowl?" "It means," I leaned closer, my gaze innocent and guileless, "this is the highest grade of crane's red, specially concocted. After drinking it, you won't suffer, nor will you vomit blood, you will die peacefully, as if from illness." I saw Luo Rongzi's eyes widen, his pupils contracting sharply. Suddenly, he reached out and snapped a silk ribbon beside the bed, shouting, "Someone! Someone!" The curtain door swung wide open. I turned to see Dong Tian'er, clad in indigo, striding toward me. "So that's how it is, Your Majesty. You never trusted me." My smile turned sharp and piercing. "You had Dong Tian'er's people waiting in the side hall all along. If I posed a threat, you'd call her in to arrest me, right?" Luo Rongzi ignored me, gasping for breath as he bellowed, "Tian'er! Tian'er! Quickly, protect the emperor. Dong Tian'er strode before me, her smile dripping with scorn. What is Her Majesty the Empress doing? Feeding the emperor poison spoonful by spoonful? She snatched the medicine bowl from my hand. How utterly foolish. You should have forced him to drink it. Luo Rongxi's eyes bulged as he glared at Dong Tian's gleaming red gem-encrusted golden armor. Its owner now gripped his jaw with one hand while forcing half the bowl of liquid down his throat with the other. The bowl crashed to the floor. Luo Rongxi collapsed to one side, gasping for breath. How? How could you? You. Dong Tian'er walked to my side and wrapped her arms around my waist. I placed a hand on her shoulder, my smile radiant, surprised. Cousin? Tian'er and I were on the same side from the very beginning. They didn't know. They would never know. On that night when the Imperial Astronomical Bureau falsely accused us, it was I who carried the daylily, kicking open door after door of the corner towers and side halls, forcibly rescuing Dong Tian'er from her hanging. I will never forget that night. It was the day my fate inexplicably swapped with Dong Tian's. Just that day, the Astronomical Observatory declared my destiny exceptionally noble, while Dong Tian's became a discarded pawn, subjected to countless scornful glances. I waited in the Empress Dowager's palace until nightfall. As sleep approached, my small network of spies reported, a line of dark figures was heading toward the Imperial Consort's quarters. It was late, the palace gates nearing their nightly lockdown. I dared not alert others, taking only Xin Chao to investigate the Dowager Consort's quarters. There, a maidservant stood glancing nervously about. She explained the Dowager Consort had fallen into a deep sleep after her evening meal, and Miss Dong had been summoned away and never returned. I instantly understood what had transpired. Having grown up in the palace for years, I was well versed in the filthy tricks of the underworld. The situation was crystal clear. Yet I never imagined that Dong Tian'er, a helpless orphan girl, would become the target of such schemes. I took Xin Chao and headed toward the direction the palace maid had pointed. We sprinted through the palace, dark as ink, kicking open every closed door to the corner towers and dark rooms we encountered. These pitch-black corners were accustomed to hiding lives. Countless eunuchs and palace maids who had offended someone had died silently in the darkness, without a sound. We raced, we chased, desperate to snatch a life from the clutches of that shadow. Finally, after Xin Chao broke into the most remote corner tower in the northwest of the palace, I saw Dong Tian'er, clad in white. She hung from the rafters, her legs kicking weakly. She had barely a breath left. We frantically cut through the white silk. Like a rag doll, Dong Tian'er fell limply to the floor, almost without a sound. Just like the life she'd been manipulated into so far, powerless to struggle, powerless to change. I held Dong Tian'er, patting her back hard to help her breathe. After what felt like an eternity, she drew a long, almost convulsive breath. Her face was pale and ashen, but she was alive. I grabbed her and shook her. Who did this to you? Did you see? Her gaze was unfocused, staring blankly ahead. I wasn't sure if she could even hear me. Sitting on the ground, I sighed deeply. The person who harmed her was most likely sent by the Empress Dowager. How cunning and devious she was, how could she possibly leave any evidence behind? And how could I possibly stand against the Empress Dowager? After a moment's thought, I grabbed her arm. Dong Tian'er, listen carefully. I, Ruan Qingyao, saved your life. Now that someone in the palace wants you dead, even the Dowager Empress can't protect you. Are you interested in making a deal with me? Her eyes remained unfocused. I calculated the time, the palace gates would soon close. Without further hesitation, I gritted my teeth and continued, I will ensure you still marry the crown prince. I will guarantee your favor and a safe delivery of his child. But you must serve me, stand by my side, and never threaten my position as crown princess. What do you say? As if hearing my words, her eyes gradually focused, finally locking onto my face. I watched as her clear, lake-like eyes welled up with tears. More and more tears gathered until they spilled over her lashes. Dong Tian'er threw herself onto me, wailing at the top of her lungs. I fumbled to hold her, wiping away her tears. Do you agree or not? Hey! Sigh. On that fateful night, in that pitch-black corner tower, Dong Tian'er and I sealed a pact for decades to come. I would ensure Dong Tian'er's safety within the Eastern Palace, while she would guarantee no other favored consort threatened our interests. I would protect her as she bore the crown prince's eldest son. In return, this child would be raised by me, becoming the legitimate heir and crown prince, the guarantee of our status. Though it may sound like I'm getting the better deal, and indeed I was, I thought. But I swear on the honor of the Ruan clan, as long as I hold that position, I will never allow anyone to threaten your safety again. My word is my bond. Dong Tian'er agreed readily. I expected hesitation, doubt, but none came. She simply held out her pinky finger and said, "Pinky swear." What? I was baffled. Pinky swear, hang by the neck, never break this vow. I've already hung myself, sister. Once we make this promise, you must never abandon me. Her swollen eyes shone brightly, radiating a childlike stubbornness. Fine, fine. I reluctantly made the promise, wondering how Dong Tian'er, taught by the Dowager Empress, could still believe in such childish things. All these years, those people, those events, were never what they seemed on the surface. When the marriage was first arranged, Luo Rongzi choked back tears before me. All these years, I have walked on eggshells, trembling with fear, striving to be a worthy crown prince. Yet I have never done a single thing that truly pleased my heart. Only Tian's has been the most cherished soul by my side. I have wronged her. I have wronged her. By candlelight, I saw his face twisted with remorse. Now was precisely when his guilt weighed heaviest, and now was the moment to plead for Dong Tian's. I crawled on my knees to his feet, bowing my head again and again. Cousin, if you truly cherish Miss Dong, then plead with the Empress Dowager. She loves you most of all. Kneel before her in the grand hall and beg. Miss Dong will surely be allowed to stay by your side. Luo Rongzi paused in his weeping, a hint of surprise in his voice. Ruan Qingyao, you would actually agree to this? I forced tears to stream down my cheeks, feigning deep devotion. Qingyao is content as long as my cousin is happy. Your love for Miss Dong runs as deep as the sea. How could I bear to see you suffer daily from the pain of separation? Luo Rongzi wavered slightly, yet hesitated. I've just been named crown prince. My second and third brothers are also deeply cherished by His Majesty. If this provokes the Emperor, that's precisely why we'll petition the Empress Dowager, not the Emperor, I replied in a mournful tone. Miss Dong is confined within the palace with no future prospects. The Dowager consort even intends to send her to a nunnery. If you delay your decision any longer, it will be too late. In the end, I swayed him. 3 days later, braving heavy snow, he knelt before the Empress Dowager's palace. His plea secured Dong Tian'er a place as a concubine by the crown prince's side. Dong Tian'er's arrogance and rudeness toward me were, of course, deliberate. We communicated secretly by passing handkerchiefs, sharing unspoken understandings on certain matters. For instance, I'd say, new consorts will enter the palace sooner or later. While you're in favor, quickly select a group to bring in. Dong Tian'er's elegant handwriting replied, fine. I'll make a real mess of things. On the day of the selection, my face was as dark as gunpowder, yet beneath my sleeves, I gave Dong Tian'er a thumbs up. She beamed, flicking me a flirtatious glance. Xin Xiao dared not utter a sound, afraid that opening her mouth would make her burst into laughter. On the day Yu Jiao entered the palace, Dong Tian'er sent me word, I'll arrive early for tomorrow's audience. I plan to cry for your benefit. Prepare yourself. I shot her a sidelong glance and replied, I'll rebuke you. Stop this whining, I won't fall for it. If you're capable, go retrieve the crown prince. Dong Tian'er replied, then I'll say, Your Majesty is correct. This humble concubine takes her leave. Luo Rongzi scolded me, I've been married for years, with many wives and concubines, yet still have no heir. Crown princess, do you know why? Terrified, I immediately stopped Yu Jiao's cooling medicine and replaced it with nourishing herbs. I vowed to make Dong Tian'er's child the eldest son. All the consorts in the palace were already being given medicinal herbs. None of them knew. But now, I couldn't rush things. Yu Jiao would likely conceive soon. I left Dong Tian'er with these words, make your plans early. Dong Tian'er's methods were truly ruthless. In the blink of an eye, Yu Jiao's child was gone. Was it you? I asked, feigning anger, clenching my teeth. What if it was? What if it wasn't? She gave a coy smile. The point is, His Highness said it wasn't my doing. Who dares say otherwise? I slammed my palm onto the nearby table. That was His Highness's first child. Then I'll simply replace it with another child. Dong Tian'er spun gracefully. You wouldn't believe, sister, but I'm already with child myself. Compared to my own offspring, what does another's matter? I gasped in surprise, and the entire hall erupted in commotion. Dong Tian'er glided toward me, lowering her voice to a soft murmur. Whatever you plan to do, sister, you'd best prepare early. This is your child, after all. I'll bear it, but how to bring it to you, that's something you'll have to figure out. Her eyes crinkled with laughter, making her look like a little fox spirit. At the Empress Dowager's funeral, Dong Tian'er knelt behind my right side and informed me that the Empress Dowager had finally passed away. Luo Rongzi had posthumously conferred upon her the title of consort. Behind me on the left, Consort Lu's eyes blazed with hatred, as if blood might spill from them. Dong Tian'er tapped my sleeve and slipped me a note. She was about to take action against Consort Lu, for this woman harbored sinister intentions. I remained silent. Yu Jiao's release on the day of Dong Tian'er's childbirth was indeed Consort Lu's doing. Dong Tian'er had warned me before. This concubine of noble birth had set her sights on my position. Both high-born ladies, both forced into a living widowhood, it was hard not to feel some pity for Consort Lu. Yet palace intrigues never allowed for compassion. Well, let Dong Tian'er have her way. I never imagined I would follow in Consort Lu's footsteps. On the day I was locked away, I saw Dong Tian'er standing at the palace path's bend, her face ashen. She was clearly terrified. I smiled bitterly in resignation. Without my protection, she would have to survive in this palace alone. Fortunately, her current situation wasn't bad. In fact, it was excellent. As the palace gates slammed shut, I mouthed the words "save me" to her. She finally came to rescue me. I watched her in her pale yellow court robes, her expression solemn and commanding. She truly carried the air of a future empress. Good. It seems after my death, she will secure her position as crown princess. Dong Tian'er, I entrust my child to you. I made my final request. I'm dying. Treat her as your own daughter, just as I did for fucking. Dong Tian'er clenched her fists tightly. You're dreaming. Please, give her a meal. I still smiled, though my vision was fading. I'm sorry, Dong Tian'er. The crown princess position. I didn't mean to. Dong Tian'er pressed her lips together, her gaze cold. A sharp glint flashed in her eyes as she spoke each word deliberately. Ruan Qingyao, you once protected me. Now, it's my turn to protect you. Protect me? Look what you've done to my Fuan. I sighed, looking at Fuan, thin as a kitten. She really only gave her a morsel of food. Dong Tian'er justified herself boldly, saying that if she hadn't done so, fucking wouldn't have been able to return to me. I hesitated. Actually, it's fine for fucking to be raised by you. I'm not much use as empress anyway. After all, you're his real mother. Don't be ridiculous. I still want fucking to inherit the position of eldest legitimate son. Dong Tian'er's tone grew increasingly sharp. Fine then. I sighed, cradling Fuan as I went to see the Empress Dowager. I told you to stop being so arrogant. See? You're paying the price now. After Dong Tian'er fell out of favor for the first time, I visited her under the pretense of reprimanding her. I did it on purpose, she said, wearing her postpartum headband, unconcerned as she played with the baby. I have to return the imperial seal to you. All this power, I can't possibly control it. No one ever taught me how to wield the Empress's authority. Only in your hands does it feel secure. Sigh. Fine. I gently stroked the newborn third prince. But ultimately, both the palace's power and the children must remain in our hands. I shouldn't have said that. Dong Tian'er had the harem under ironclad control, unable to bear even a single child. But now, she was no longer the Tian'er who once occupied Luo Rongzi's heart. With Consort Tong's uproar, she'd taken a nasty tumble. Carrying pastries to ease Luo Rongzi's frustration, I stepped out of the warm study to find Dong Tian'er kneeling at the base of the high stone steps. My temper flared. Next time, don't push things so far. Her face was frozen pale, yet her smile was bright. "Next time, no one will have anything on me." Such a sharp tongue, yet the next moment, she froze unconscious. I ordered her carried back, with no delays. Later, I'd have to figure out how to restore her position. What a hassle. Well, then, it was my turn to be a little more brazen. Luo Rongzi grew increasingly unpredictable. His growing suspicion meant my plans with Dong Tian'er were increasingly unstable. He'd uncovered several of our operatives, but thankfully, hadn't suspected us yet. The Empress Dowager's death became the final straw. I'd been constantly by her side, how could I not know her condition? Such a sudden illness, such a swift passing. Luo Rongzi was truly unforgivable. The Empress Dowager had been kind to me, and I could not fail to repay her. Your Majesty, rest in peace. I will teach that ungrateful wretch a lesson for you, I declared, my eyes red with fury, reckless in my words as she lay dying. Suddenly, she smiled. "Empress, you need not dwell on my kindness. There is something I never told you. It is true I helped you back then. But before that, Consort Dong knelt before me, detailing your miserable confinement and begging me to save you. That's why I entrusted fucking to you. It turns out you two children have always been of one mind. How wonderful, how wonderful." The Empress Dowager passed away suddenly. We decided to make Luo Rongzi taste the medicine he had administered to the Empress Dowager. What a fool. He never suspected that whether it was me or Dong Tian's tending to his illness, we would feed him soup laced with poison. Step by step, we crafted the illusion of a chronic ailment, leaving him utterly unaware. That autumn, when fucking turned 16, Dong Tian's informed me, everything was ready. The Dong clan had rebuilt its power, fucking's ascension to the throne was now guaranteed. Excellent. My brother would soon return as well. It was foolproof from the start anyway. Luo Rongzi's 3 sons were all born to Dong Tian'er. Aside from our children, only 2 young princesses remained, born to lowly consorts. Though he never named a crown prince, what did it matter? Fucking was the legitimate eldest son. Yet on the very day I acted, he established the foundation of the kingdom. How convenient. Now there was even less need for trouble. Then you're no longer of use. It's time for me to avenge my wrongfully killed mother, sister-in-law, and nephew. On the day of the start of winter, the emperor passed away. Crown Prince Luo Hejin ascended the throne, honoring his legitimate mother, Empress Ruan, as the Eastern Palace Dowager Empress, and his birth mother, Consort Dong, as the Western Palace Dowager Empress. Court and country alike knew the new emperor was merely 16, an age neither fully mature nor truly childish. Should the Empress Dowager insist, ruling from behind a curtain would be inevitable. Moreover, the new emperor's status was highly unusual. He had both a foster mother and a birth mother, and now honored 2 empress dowagers. Under such circumstances, a wave of bloody turmoil seemed inevitable. Unexpectedly, the 2 empress dowagers got along remarkably well. Rumor had it they were as close as sisters. Not only did they share no political disagreements, but they even resided in the same palace. Day in and day out, they would drag Princess Fuan and Lady Xinqiao into mahjong games, playing from dawn till dusk in sheer delight. The only one suffering was the new emperor. Freshly enthroned and inexperienced in state affairs, he was said to have knelt before the 2 empresses dowager, pleading for them to rule behind the curtain. Little did he know, the empresses were too engrossed in mahjong and comic books to grant his request. This left the 15-year-old Princess Xinheng in a plight. Though a princess, she spent her days assisting her imperial brother in reviewing memorials and handling mundane affairs, leaving her not a moment to herself. Fortunately, there were still imperial in-laws to offer support. The current chancellor, surnamed Dong, was some distant cousin of the Western Palace Empress Dowager. Diligent and incorruptible, he had been enfeoffed as a marquis. Yet it was unfortunate he wasn't the Empress Dowager's own brother. This kinship remained 1 degree removed. Meanwhile, the Eastern Palace Empress Dowager's brother had also returned to court. With the Duke of Rohan's family exonerated, he inherited the duke's title. Yet having endured the devastation of his family's confiscation and now bereft of kin, his spirit had utterly collapsed. Gone was the former playboy's swagger. When the Empress Dowager recently sought to arrange a marriage for him, he refused, citing his enduring grief for his late wife. Who didn't know this duke had once been a regular in the brothels and taverns? Now, clutching the spirit tablets of his parents and wife, he seemed resolved to spend the rest of his days in mourning. The Empress Dowager simply let him be. The emperor had also reached marriageable age. Both Empress Dowagers insisted His Majesty must wed a consort who pleased him, to whom he would be devoted for life. This frightened the emperor so much he dared not take any concubines, muttering that perhaps the Empress Dowager had read too many romance novels and was testing her son. In the end, the emperor did take a queen, marrying an obscure young woman from the Jiang family. Surprisingly, after the wedding, the emperor and empress truly harmonized like Qin and Se, and he never took another concubine. Within 2 years, they welcomed a prince, delighting the Empress Dowagers so much their smiles stretched wide. Yet the Empress Dowager flatly refused to help raise the child. Poor Empress Jiang now nursed the infant herself, growing plump from exhaustion. It was said Empress Dowager Ruan had once been raised by the Empress Dowager herself. Why wouldn't she share the burden with her sister-in-law? Alas, truly. Fuan, what devilry are you scribbling now? The rice paper before me was snatched up by a hand. What nonsense about gaining weight from exhaustion? Your sister-in-law isn't tired raising the child, she's utterly blissful. Besides, she hasn't gained a single pound. How dare you write such nonsense? Your Majesty, I was wrong, I was wrong. I won't dare again. I practiced my apologies, I won't write it anymore. Sister Xinheng arrived too, snatching the paper and scanning it twice. You say you won't write it, so you won't? I'll make you finish it. Let's see how you make things up this time. Under my siblings' piercing stares, cold sweat beating on my brow, I picked up the brush. Truly, everyone finds their own happiness. Our entire family is blissfully happy, utterly and completely so. So really, it's no big deal that Father Emperor isn't here. I muttered to myself, or rather, without him, we've become more like a real family. End.